Bring you out again to our studio in New York City. We're delighted that you have chosen to get up with us this morning. And this is my usual Football Friday crew. And we had a lot of stuff planned for you this morning, and we have gotten to almost none of it and don't plan to, because last night was a memorable night in the NFL because we would love to forget what happened. We are, as always, live from above the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17 in New York. And if you didn't see it, here's how it ended.
And getting in there was Myles Garrett, and Garrett took the helmet off and slammed him on the top of the head. Oh my goodness. With 8 seconds to go in the game, a wild scene. Well, there was no need for that.
No.
That took place in the final seconds of what had been a very chippy game all night long in Cleveland last night. A game the Browns had won already. It was 21-7, and there were fewer than 15 seconds left in the game. Left part of your screen, that's Myles Garrett, former #1 pick in the draft, taking Mason Rudolph to the ground, then yanking his helmet off, and as you see here, it defies description. You don't need me to tell you what you just saw. Then Larry Ogunjobi is the one who comes in from behind Rudolph and shoves him to the ground when he's not facing him. That's Maurkice Pouncey of the Steelers, who is throwing fists and kicks in the direction of Myles Garrett in the end. There is a lot to sort out, and we're spending so much of this morning doing exactly that here after an ugly night in Cleveland.
You know, that is embarrassing. You know, what I did was foolish, and I shouldn't have allowed myself to slip like that. That's out of character, but situation like that where, you know, it's an emotional game, like Larry said, and allow myself to fall into those emotions, you know, with that last play and what happened. I hurt my whole team with what I did, and, you know, that could come back to bite us. And I don't know what kind of repercussions I face, but, you know, got to be better.
Of course, that's not who we want to be at the end of the game. That's not who Myles wants to be. That's not who we're going to be. You have to be able to maintain your composure in times like that, and under no circumstance do we want anything to do with anything like that. I'm embarrassed. Myles is embarrassed. It's not good.
What was your perspective on what happened at the end?
I'll keep my thoughts to myself. You guys saw what happened at the end.
You have no comment about it?
That's exactly what I said. I got no comment.
Have you ever seen anything like that at the end of a game?
No more questions regarding that, because I'm saying nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cowardly, kind of pretty bush league. It's okay though, you know. I'll take it. I'm not going to back down from any bully out there. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
I said it on the field after. It's inexcusable. He knows that. There's no other way around it. He's going to own up to it. He's going to handle it. And this locker room is going to have to come together, because this is going to be a soap opera on the outside, much like the media has portrayed us to be from the whole season. So we have to be a disciplined team. We have to address it. We have to handle it. We have to come together. Instead of feeling like we just won a game that we really needed, we talk about a singular focus and mindset. It feels like we lost. And so it's going to take time for us to realize that we just won this game, even though it's very obvious on the scoreboard. But that's the tough part.
So that is some of the reaction. Our reporter, Jeremy Fowler, was there to cover the game for us. And, Jeremy, I'm told you were standing just a few yards away as this unfolded. So can you tell us from your vantage point what you saw?
Yeah, Greeny, I was right on the Browns sideline looking right at the play. And as you see it develop, Mason Rudolph throws that screen pass, and you think, okay, the game's about to end. You're looking at the clock, trying to see this thing end. And then about 2 or 3 seconds later, Myles Garrett swoops in with the late hit. And then all I can see is Garrett's movie screen-sized back, the number 95, and he's kind of jostling. And it almost looks like he's punching Mason Rudolph, but it turns out Rudolph was trying to rip that helmet off. And then you see bodies kind of flying around, and then there's a brief pause there where David DeCastro is holding Garrett. You think it's over. And then the hammer comes down with the helmet. And I'm looking right at Rudolph. I'm waiting for him to drop or something. But he's sitting there talking to the officials. And, you know, the whole scene was surreal because Maurkice Pouncey jumps in and got all these licks on Myles Garrett. But then I'm looking at Browns players, Greeny. I was fixated on them because they looked like they were celebrating. Now, maybe it was just trying to ride for a teammate and not knowing what was going on. But there were dozens of guys, you know, trying to pump up Garrett, and OBJ is pumping up the crowd. It was a very odd scene and very different from the Browns locker room that was very quiet, felt like a loss. Guys were dejected over it. In the Steelers locker room, they wanted justice.
Take us inside that Browns locker room. What sorts of things did you hear players saying?
Well, you kept hearing the word unacceptable. You kept hearing the words Myles Garrett's a good guy, but he knows he can't put us in that position. So guys were going soft for the most part. They didn't want to rip their teammate, except Baker Mayfield really stood up as an accountable leader, saying that it's unacceptable. He should be suspended for that, and that the team can kind of be galvanized by that. So, I thought Baker came out looking like a leader that this team clearly needs, because even before the Garrett play, there were helmet shots all over the field. They lead the league in penalties and undisciplined plays and offsides issues. And so Freddie Kitchens, I'm told, in the locker room scene with his team, tried to corral things and say, we just can't have this, especially if we want to have playoff goals, have to be a more disciplined team. So we'll see if that resonates.
They won the game again. They're 4-6. They do have playoff hopes from the Steelers' standpoint of this, and you have covered the Steelers for a long time. You know that team well. And these teams play each other again in 2 weeks, which is probably a terrible thing in this, but it's unavoidable. So what did you hear from them, and what do you expect to happen going forward?
Well, with the Steelers, there's kind of a combination of anger and disbelief. This is a very prideful team. I spoke with one player privately who was seething at the Browns and how they acted after the melee. He called them classless and said they act like they've never been there before. So the Steelers, look, they know they got their butts kicked yesterday, but they feel there's a certain way you should carry yourself in the AFC North even when things get chippy. So 16 days from now, they are looking forward to this. They don't expect to see Myles Garrett. I do know the Browns are bracing for a multiple game suspension. They just don't know yet, because the league is going to spend the better part of today digging into this to find out exactly what to do.
All right, Jeremy Fowler, thank you so much. Well done. We appreciate your on-field perspective from what happened. Let me bring it out to the table. And we've been talking about this a lot this morning, but I understand off the top of a new hour here, there's a lot of people that are joining us. So your initial reaction, and we've had 60 minutes of TV so far to chew on this, and we've had a lot of different perspective that has changed my view on it at least a little bit. So as we sit right now, if Roger Goodell is watching right now and he's thinking, how exactly should I handle this as regards Myles Garrett, what should he do?
Well, he has to send a very, very stern message to say this. If you want to keep credibility, Commissioner Goodell, and you want to have players believe that you really do care about them, then a guy who hits another guy on the top of the head with a helmet and uses it as a weapon has to sit for a long time. End of story. Otherwise, people are going to continue to question your credibility, your competency, and your ability to affect player safety the way you say you want to affect it. So if you want to get people's attention and you want to get Myles Garrett's attention, and as Booger McFarland said, hey, look, if we really want to boil this down to one person, to really who's at fault, he's at fault. Freddie Kitchens is not at fault. The ownership, the Haslam Group is not at fault here. John Dorsey's not at fault, although all these people are going to be talked about because of the fact that Myles Garrett wears their colors. It's about one person and what he did. Now, other people are going to get suspended as well, but one person used a piece of equipment as a weapon, and one person endangered another player's life. And you have to send him a very, 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 very strong message. Otherwise, if you think people question your credibility now, you have no idea what would happen if you don't.
Yeah, so when we came in, if I could just briefly, when we came in here, my perspective was suspend him for the rest of the season. They have 6 games left in the season. But as our conversation has gone forward and Marcus Spears came on and suggested 16 games, it occurs to me that just suspending him for the rest of the season feels rather arbitrary. If there were 8 games left, would you suspend him for that many games? They should choose a suspension that feels as though it fits the crime rather than it fits the remainder of what is left in their season. So if you want to make it 8 games, 10 games, whatever it might be, if it spills over into next season, so be it.
Well, I look at that, the personal conduct policy for off the field, like that starts at 6 games. So I think they'll probably, I know that they don't try to marry that up with the drug suspensions or different things, but 6 games to me kind of has a little bit of a bow on it. I mean, if you're talking about off the field stuff and a guy got in trouble for an assault or something like that, they would start that at 6 games. I don't know how they will view this relative to a lot of those things.
The only thing I'll say real quick, Bobby, is this, and I don't want to cut you off, is that are we really interested in putting a bow on this? Are we trying to make this go away? Or are we trying to send a message? I mean, look, again, we're talking about this in one respect about how egregious this is, and then we're talking about, well, are we really serving the interests of the players by just trying to tie this up and make it go away? You know what I'm saying? I mean, is this twice as bad?
I'll jump in on that.
They're going to make an example out of him, though. For sure.
I'll jump in on that.
And don't you have to?
You've got to.
Every player, we've all talked about, all the foreign players that have come on, said, we've never seen this and we would never do this.
Right.
Right? So there's no message necessarily need to be sent to the players because we know not to do anything like that.
Okay, but to
and
that
we also
player.
agree, right? So to that player, you're sending a message, but not necessarily to the rest of the league. Like, hey, league, don't do this, players. This is not right. Like, we all know that this is not right. Sure. So whatever you're doing and whatever punishment is being handed down to Myles Garrett, it's strictly for Myles Garrett because everyone looks and was like, what the hell was that? What are you doing? That's crazy.
Yeah, this isn't a systemic problem where you see guys.
You're right.
But it is what it is.
Right.
And
exactly.
I agree with the notion that you should not act here based upon what will make this go away. This isn't going away. That's video that is going to live now until the end of time. I'm told that in the lead block, the opening segment of Good Morning America on ABC today, a program that is watched by millions of people who many of them don't pay a lot of attention to football. They covered three things: the horrendous school shooting yesterday, the impeachment hearings, and this, Myles Garrett. This is what the National Football League has to deal with. Mark Sanchez, let me turn to you on this. If you were in Mason Rudolph's position yesterday, I don't mean literally, but figuratively, would you be inclined to consider bringing charges? That's one of the things that has come up here. Would you, as a quarterback, with exactly those circumstances happening to you, be considering the legal options here that would go beyond what might happen on the football field?
I'm sure it would come up by his representation, and that's their job to protect him. I don't know if I personally, I don't want to speak for him, obviously. I don't represent him, but I don't know if I'd take it that far. Obviously, we talked about it. He blacked out. He snapped and almost went unconscious with rage and anger. And you don't condone that, but I don't know if I'd want to prolong this anymore. I think Myles Garrett's, they're going to make an example out of him, and Pouncey's probably going to get suspended so they don't have to play each other. Ogunjobi's going to get suspended when they play each other in a couple weeks, so those guys are out of the equation. But I don't know if I'm going legal charges.
I will point that out. So the two other names he just named, one of them is Maurkice Pouncey, the offensive lineman from Pittsburgh, who, when Garrett is on the ground, comes in throwing fists and kicks. The other is Larry Ogunjobi from the Browns, who comes running up behind Rudolph, who's facing in the other direction without a helmet on, and just shoves him from behind. The consensus
I
of
think
this
I'd almost be more mad at Ogunjobi.
Yeah,
to be totally honest, I understand. I'm not making light or anything of what Myles Garrett did. But he was obviously just upset, and he freaked out. He blacks out. He loses it and swings a helmet. Inexcusable. But the other guy, Ogunjobi, like, what are you doing? That was such fake tough guy stuff. I've never seen that.
You looked him up.
That was weak.
Sought him out and hit him in the back.
Yeah, if you want to go fight Maurkice Pouncey.
Without a helmet on.
He's
without
fighting.
a helmet on.
Like a quarterback, he wasn't a threat.
So we have some agreement here that Larry Ogunjobi should and likely will face some sort of discipline for certain and likely a suspension. Jonathan Vilma, let me turn to you, and I'm going to bring an offensive lineman into this conversation in a minute. As for Maurkice Pouncey, who sees that happen to his quarterback, and even I, who never played the game, understand the mentality of an offensive lineman when it comes to protecting his quarterback. Mm-hmm. Garrett is down on the ground. Another offensive lineman is sort of holding him down, and Pouncey is in there throwing punches and kicks. Yeah. What would you do with Maurkice Pouncey if you're Roger Goodell?
If I'm Roger Goodell, I still suspend Maurkice Pouncey 2 games, 3 games max. If I'm the player and I'm a teammate of Maurkice Pouncey, I'm clapping all the way. I love what he did. I would have done the same thing, and I understand it. But the telling point in that video is when you watch David DeCastro and how he handles Myles Garrett. On top of him, it looks like they're talking or whatever it is, not throwing any punches, trying to resolve this issue. And then you see Maurkice Pouncey kicking and throwing punches. So you have those two players, same position, same player that they're defending, and you're looking on film. If I'm Roger Goodell, I'm saying, well, this is one guy trying to solve this. There's another guy that is actually insinuating and making it worse. So I have to have some sort of repercussions for Maurkice
I'll show
Pouncey.
you through it. So DeCastro is 66. He's the one who was on top of Garrett when they go to the ground. And then Pouncey is the one who you're going to see come running in. He sees the helmet swing, and you won't talk about a guy who blacks out, who just loses it in anger and frustration. That's him. And candidly, and I can't believe I'm the one saying this, I don't have that much of an issue with what he did.
I have no issue with it at all.
Look,
it's understandable. You can reason with it.
You have to punish it.
Yeah.
But I understand.
Well, and it's the same.
I understand exactly why you did.
We all
and you're right. And
agree
you're right. If you're walking into the UPMC complex this morning where the Steelers have their locker room, you're just like, hey, what's up, Marky? There's nothing. It's like,
nobody's
exactly.
Everybody understands it.
Exactly.
But it's like the NBA where they had to delineate once you come on the floor, we've got to suspend you. We can't allow these things to continue to escalate after the fight's already been resolved, even though, like, as a teammate,
and Marquise was cool with that. He said, do what you got to do.
He knows.
They all get it. Let me get D. Wood in here. Damian Woody is standing by and ready to go, I'm told. He, of course, was an offensive lineman forever in the National Football League and a great one, and is a great friend of ours here. D. Wood, I just want to give you the floor. I know you're hearing a little bit of this part of the conversation. Whatever you want to react to, take it there. What are your thoughts this morning?
Yeah, man, I was watching the game with Scott Van Pelt last night, and as everything was unfolding, I'm like, that's criminal. That's criminal behavior right there on the football field. And think how crazy that is for me to say. I mean, we literally, as football players, we get paid to physically assault another man, and for me to really think that action was criminal speaks volumes right there. If you're the National Football League, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to have that action on display on a nationally televised game. And think about this. We're not even talking about the game. We're not even talking about this is a big-time win for the Cleveland Browns, giving them momentum as they move forward. All we're talking about is what Myles Garrett did, which he could have seriously injured or killed that man if he had struck him with the crown of his helmet. Now, Myles Garrett, who in my opinion might be their best player on the team, will not be a part of this playoff push for the rest of the season. That's how selfish this act was on Myles Garrett's part. And it leads me to think, what type of environment is being fostered by the head coach? Now, listen, I understand that Myles Garrett is his own man, and he's going to be responsible for what he did. But we're talking about a Cleveland Browns team that's leading the league in penalties, that every week has unsportsmanlike penalties, pre-snatch penalties. What is going on with the environment as far as discipline, being undisciplined by the Cleveland Browns? You have the game at hand. Literally, the game is over, and you can't control your emotions. I don't care what Mason Rudolph did. You can't control your emotions enough to know that, you know what? We got the game won. That's all I need to say right there. We won the game. And you commit that type of act, just dumb.
I do want to get your perspective as an offensive lineman on the Maurkice Pouncey part of this. You might have heard the end of our conversation there. Pouncey is the Steeler offensive lineman who comes in no semblance of a peacemaking role, and no question about it. He's in there throwing punches and kicks, but the mentality of the offensive line to defend the quarterback at all times. What was your thought on how he handled it last night and how the league should handle him?
I thought he was right on. I thought he was right on the money. I would have did the same thing. And I know people are saying, well, how can you sit here and justify Myles Garrett, but you're applauding Maurkice Pouncey? Listen, he's standing up for his guy. As an offensive lineman, you never let any defensive player, anybody come after your quarterback. And to see that type of action from Myles Garrett, hell yeah, I'm coming after that guy. I'm doing everything that Maurkice Pouncey did. And you know what? Maurkice Pouncey is probably going to get suspended. I get it. I understand where the league is probably coming from, but I guarantee you, I tell you this, everyone in that building this morning is giving him fist pumps for what he did, for the actions that he took against Myles Garrett.
D. Wood, that's really well done. Thanks a million for getting up early for us this morning. We'll see you in here next Thursday, if not before. Let me bring it back to the table. You look like you had a reaction.
Yeah, you know what? And I know we keep saying about protecting my quarterback. If John Villum and I were on a football team and he got into a fight, got his helmet ripped off, and the opposing team's offensive lineman took his helmet and whacked John Villum on top of the head, you don't think we'd run to his defense too? Yeah. This transcends just a quarterback. This transcends the fact that someone's assaulting one of your teammates. And for people to say, well, Maurkice Pouncey, he's a thug, he's whatever. Okay, look. We're still human beings, right? Even though we're playing a sport, we're still human beings, and we still have human instinct. And if you saw one of your buddies, a frat buddy, a child, whatever, get hit over the top of the head like that in the street, you're going to tell me you wouldn't react the same way Maurkice Pouncey did? You'd grab the nearest thing to you, and you'd be trying to return the favor. 100%. I mean, come on now. So for anybody who's sitting here, whether it's on Twitter or otherwise, sitting there going, well, why aren't we focusing on Maurkice Pouncey? Why aren't we focusing in on Mason Rudolph? He started the fight. Don't be stupid, and don't keep some perspective about what we're talking about here. And I know we're going to talk about Myles Garrett a lot, Well, we're supposed to talk about him a lot because we've never seen someone clock someone over the head with the helmet before.
And so, and you're exactly right when you say that. Like, just because we do that doesn't absolve him, though, of getting a suspension. You've got to be fine with it. And if you're Marquise Pouncey,
sure. Look,
he's going to eat it. Yeah, you're going to eat it.
I mean,
you're going to eat the suspension.
I mean, it's cool. I'm just saying, though. I mean, people want to vilify him like in the same way.
No.
He needs to be talked about the same way Miles needs to be talked about because he was like, no, don't do that.
No,
one other
Miles
thing.
crossed the threshold.
But there's all kinds of cross currents happening here where people are saying, well, if you're going to talk about him, then why are you talking about Mason?
No, let's make it clear for everyone. Myles Garrett was dead wrong and should be suspended double-digit games.
Yeah.
Marquise Pouncey, as you said, reacted to what Myles Garrett did.
Yeah.
So what he did is not in the same light as Myles Garrett, and yeah, maybe he suspended a couple games. Right. What Ogie, what's his name again? The Coward. I'll just call him the Coward. What the Coward did is horrendous. I want him suspended for longer, 4 to 6 games, because what he did was horrible.
That's cheap.
And the last piece of this, people keep bringing Freddie Kitchens and the penalties and all these things. Those are 2 false starts, late hit, different things. Yeah. That is completely separate. You don't see, and there's not a coach in the NFL who I've ever played for, even heard about, that is encouraging that type of behavior. Nobody's doing it.
And
He's a punching bag.
This has nothing to do with it, but I'll tell you what Jeremy Fowler said about how the sideline was reacting initially. That bothers you a little bit.
I'm hoping they didn't.
I hope it's not like you're right.
I have to get to a break here, guys. Hold on one second. Obviously, everyone has a lot they want to say about this, and we will continue to. Let me go to a short time out here. We'll continue our coverage of this. There's a lot left to be said. We've got Ryan Clark coming in with his reaction.